there, hope you're doing well. Welcome to Snowball's Polyglot Software Development Podcast. This is not a technical podcast. And for folks who follow our podcast, if you don't, I highly recommend that you do so. Our podcasts are generally technical in nature. I guess 90 to over 95% of them are. But like I mentioned in one of my earlier podcasts, there are podcasts where we talk, discuss or socialize topics, if you will, that fall outside the realm of core engineering per se. And it doesn't happen all the time, but where we feel the urge to do it, we do it. Right. With that said, this podcast is going to be about U.S. immigration. Now, again, as a disclaimer, this is my personal opinion. I do not obviously work for U.S. immigration. I have no clue about the actual from a formal standpoint. So there's just me sharing my thoughts and views and opinions at a personal level. So it's those just purely my opinions, especially as an immigrant, as somebody who moved to the country here, even if it was more than half my life ago. I still want to share because I saw a post yesterday or a couple of days back, and I've seen more posts along those lines that on LinkedIn, which is healthy to have a conversation and disagreements. That's completely understandable. But the tone of a lot of these posts to me, it's not something I particularly agree with. It calls out for issues with U.S. immigration. Sure, everything needs improvement. There's no question about that. Now, you could go to any country, any department, and find issues and find avenues for improvement, which is no different from software companies, our repos and code bases, right? And even as us as people, we all have room for improvement. That's a given, and it's important that citizens, folks, take the time to define these issues and report them, so people who have the authority to fix it can fix it completely, right? No question about that. But the problem I've had, at least personally, with some of this, the posts and the language is it seems to almost make immigration right as opposed to a privilege, right? That is where I think I have a disagreement. When you want to immigrate to another country for whatever reason, that's actually a privilege given by that country to you. It's not a right. I don't think so. Because I cannot choose to just immigrate. If I want to immigrate to Switzerland tomorrow, I doubt I can just go there. I'm pretty sure there's a lot of paperwork and I have to qualify. And maybe I do, maybe I don't. And if I don't, I probably wouldn't be able to immigrate to that country. And even if I qualify, I have to go through the list of things that they would require for me to do. I pick Switzerland because it's a beautiful country. A lot of people would love to migrate to Switzerland, I reckon. But from what I understand, it's one of the hardest places to migrate to. Now, America is also hard to migrate to, and I think we are a nation of immigrants, and I speak to it as somebody who is an immigrant myself, obviously. But this is my understanding, living through that experience. And before, for any of you that are thinking, hey, are you an immigrant who believes that you can go to a place and then you close the door? Absolutely not, right? Especially we are a land of immigrants, so people should continue to come here and improve our country, and do it legally. So obvious, right? Needless to mention. But there has to be a method to the madness of what we agree or disagree. And here's what I mean by that. uh, the post that I do see that speaks to it as saying, hey, you know what, I'm really smart, not me, but I'm just speaking to it in third person, if you will. Like, hey, I'm a really smart person. I went to these great schools to study. I have beautiful or wonderful experience, and I'm perfectly qualified, so I should be able to migrate. Understandable. I would want to believe that a lot of us were in that position when we migrated and along the way. So, for instance, in my case, I work for a really large company. They're still one of the, the companies have become bigger and bigger these days. So then, they're not a multi-trillion dollar company, but they are a very, very respectable, large product company. So I applied for work. The way it generally works is if they're able to find someone who's local to fill that position, then they're going to hire that person. If they're not able to find that person in a certain window of time, then you are willing to look outside and find an international person to fill that position because you just didn't find a local resource. At the highest level, that's my understanding of how a lot of this H-1B immigration works. So, a lot of us like me applied for it. They were looking for other people. They didn't find in one person, somebody to fill that position, at least in that window of time, from what I understand. And then you go through the immigration process legally. It takes years. It took me several years as well. A lot of reasons why it could have come soon enough, but policies change, administrations change, and things change. So it took time, and finally, it ends up happening, and not everybody ends up being blessed in that sense, right? I know friends who are perfectly qualified people who couldn't make that happen. It's not necessarily within your control. It's absolutely not, right? You're at the mercy of a lot of these other systems. So they ended up going back, and now if you're qualified, you can find a good living anywhere in the world. Now you may have a reason to want to migrate to a certain country, and you want to make that happen. And if it doesn't happen, you are surely going to be disappointed. I would have been too. Like if I didn't live in India, which is a beautiful country, the only other place I would have wanted to go to is where I end up living right now, which is the US. I did not try to immigrate to any other country. If I go back half my life or more than half my life ago, would I try relocating to any other country? Absolutely not. I think, thanks to God, I ended up moving to the best place in the world. So everybody, a lot of people want to come to the US. Very understandable. We are a very welcoming nation. So makes sense, right? And then plus, you have great examples of immigrants who've starting from the wealthiest man in the world to Jensen Huang, who runs Nvidia, to a lot of the folks who run these large companies. Are a number of them are immigrants, but that's, that makes sense. But does that mean every immigrant who's coming here is like a Jensen Huang or Elon Musk or one of those people? Not really, right? What are the odds? It's like, when you play, you know, a game, or even if it's a game of chance like poker, there are odds, right? When you're waiting for a certain card to make your hand the best hand on a river, there is a chance, but depending on a lot of these permutations, combinations, it becomes much. In some cases, your outs are very few, right? You don't have enough outs to make that hand essentially. So similarly, even if entirely, hopefully it's a reasonable example, maybe not, maybe yes. Uh, what are the odds, chances of an immigrant coming here becoming one of those people? It's actually probably minuscule. I don't know what the number is. I don't know what the average US immigration is on an annual basis, and then you can get the list of these people who've made a phenomenal difference to the country. Now, if you take someone like me who's come here, who lives as a good citizen, who pays taxes and does everything as a good citizen should do, and moved here to make a good life for oneself. Uh, Hopefully we contribute in other ways, right? We start companies, we provide employment, we build software, we just try to make the place a little bit better than it probably would have been if not for us being here. We may not be able to make an impact at the levels of these other people that I mentioned earlier, but we at least do what we can, a lot of us. So I'm not saying again that you've got to be a Musk or Jensen Huang to be an immigrant. I'm not one, surely, right? So it'd be hypocritical, and it doesn't even make sense. But I just want to state the fact that when we take examples of these are great immigrants, so obviously need to open the borders up. I'm not so sure if that's going to be the case. The administrations have certain reasons as to why things have to be a certain way, and they are in the business of doing things. Like if I'm in the business of engineering, I hopefully know a little bit more about that than music, that I'm not in the business of. I wish I were, but I'm not. Similarly, folks who run for government offices and get elected and have these positions, whether they're nominated or whether they were elected, they have the authority, and we hopefully have to pick the right people so we entrust them with making these right decisions. But things take time. I mean, America is the third largest country in the world with what, 330 million people, and I don't know what the average number of immigrants are, the legal immigration that happens on an annual basis. So sometimes life is not fair. It's just the way it works. You might be perfectly qualified, uh, but you just didn't happen. Maybe God has something better for you, or maybe this is going to happen at a later time. But the problem I've had is people blaming American immigration as though it's the worst in the world. Now, every place needs improvement, but I have some experience, even though not directly so, with immigration in other countries, even if it's like for applying for a visa, for instance. I just want to ask this one question to everybody who's really complaining about the US immigration system. Have you tried applying to any other country? If so, how has that experience been, the immigration experience? Because I know that there are countries that are completely unwelcoming to immigrants, and even the other ones that are not so unwelcoming, they make it extremely difficult. So it'll take you years or decades sometimes, and you might never ever end up becoming getting a permanent residency or citizenship. You'll just be at the mercy of your spouse. Maybe it's the right word, maybe it's not. What I mean is you are dependent on the immigration status of your spouse forever. I know countries where it's still the case even today. So when I applied for, when I went through the immigration process, did I think things needed improvement? Absolutely. It was decades ago, but still, I'm pretty sure, I don't know what the status is today, but since it's in the news all the time, I'm pretty sure there's room for improvement. And I think qualified, good people who will make our country better should have a legal path to immigration. And I think nobody disagrees with that. But the question being, whether it is a right or a privilege, I think it's unquestionable that it's a privilege, not a right. So I couldn't stand outside the immigration office and say, you know what, I've got all of these qualifications, my diplomas and my experience, and I can write code better than anybody else. So you have to make me a citizen or whatnot. And they'll be like, no, it doesn't work that way. There's probably again a method to the madness, right? You need a good number of engineers, good number of doctors, good number of musicians, good number of creative people, artists, across all fields and industries, right? It has come with a gamut. I don't think a great nation is made up of just good engineers or good doctors or good scientists. It's made up of good people from all of these areas. And then we have to accept the fact that to be able to get into another country, you have to prove that you are worthy of that place, meaning better than the locals who can do that job. And the dynamics keep changing, right? You needed n number of engineers to write code last year. You need n minus whatever that minus is this year, and it's going to be n minus something times something the next year, right? Because it's just going to be the case. So you need different skills. You need AI skills and skills in that aspect of engineering, in which we all try to come up to speed with. So that is the truth. So nobody questions that somebody is qualified if they're truly qualified. But just saying that I'm really smart, it comes across as braggadocious to me, if you will. That are, even if you didn't go to the best schools or did the I don't know, had the best experience, maybe you bring something else to the table. Maybe you're so you have this extraordinary experience in social service and making lives, enriching lives of other people, the underprivileged or whatnot. Maybe, I don't know, maybe there's a path to immigration there for those people, because you're not selling yourself by way of diplomas and qualifications and experience. So I think it's important to recognize that before you start blaming a system. And I don't even know, it's amazing, it's the beauty of our country that we are able to, someone's able to blame the system without being actually a resident here at all, right? Which is awesome. I don't even know how many countries, you could complain about, how many other countries that you actually truly don't quote unquote belong to by way of, from an immigration standpoint, right? Like you don't have a permanent residence or a citizenship. Now, I don't know how the H-1B process works today. I am it's decades, so I'm completely out of touch. And I'm pretty sure we had a number of issues at the time, and there were issues along the way, and there are newer issues today, and those all need to be rectified and fixed. So the good people who want to be good citizens, should have a way to come here. But I think there needs to be a sense of respect and gratitude. And I felt like I could say this as an immigrant, because if somebody else said it, I'm pretty sure everyone's going to be like, oh, you know what, you're a racist, right? I think the term was used very loosely. I think I've lived here most of my life at this point, and I have said this many times. Have I been subject to any, have I felt unwelcome at any point of time? Absolutely not. I'm being genuinely honest, which makes us probably the best place to migrate to. But because we are the best place, there's got to be certain checks and balances and rules, and people have to respect it. Now, if you're writing these posts so it goes viral, people comment and like it, I get it, right? We all have to do what we have to do, and some of us get lucky with them, and other times maybe not, because sometimes it takes time to create a very difficult course or podcast or whatever it is that we do, and sometimes we just have a quick conversation, and there's more people watching it than the one where we spend a whole lot of time in. So things are not generally, life is not fair, as probably Bill Gates was attributed to saying that years ago. But hopefully things even out at a certain point, as long as we believe, stick to our, convictions, and be honest in what we do. So if for a good engineer, if I applied, like I said, just to wrap up this podcast, when I went through the process of migrating here, I was like, you know what, if it works out, great. If not, it's all right. India is a lovely country as well. There's no dearth of opportunities there. I moved here for different reasons. Each of us moves from one place to another for our own specific set of reasons. It doesn't have to be always money or making a better, I don't know. In my case, let's take it simple. I wanted a place where I could just drink water without being worried about the quality of water, just as paranoid as I am about when it comes to those things, or be able to breathe fresh, clean air, for instance, right? I'm not saying India doesn't offer that. The part of India I grew up in, the time I grew up in, it did not offer that. So I was like, you know what, I want to move to another place. There were plenty of options, and I had other reasons why I wanted to come here, and I didn't want to go anywhere else. And if it didn't work out, I would have just gone back to India and, probably been a little bit disappointed because things didn't happen the way I'd anticipated. But India being a lovely place, I would have just adjusted just fine, right? I have friends and family and culture and great food and festivals there, so no complaints either way. So hopefully, whatever you're setting out to achieve, you're able to get it. But just keep in mind that sometimes what you're asking for is actually a privilege and not a right. And being able to recognize the difference may not matter to you from an immigration standpoint or from a formal standpoint, but probably does matter to you from a peace of mind standpoint, right? And how you're able to go through that process, because sometimes this journey can be very, very excruciatingly painful, because I know people who've been in the process for like years without knowing what's going to happen, and being put in that state of state of limbo, if you will, where you don't exactly know where you're going to settle down, can be very, very, very difficult, especially after you start a family, you have children and whatnot. uh, can become harder. I'm not saying that's the only case where it becomes hard. That is one example I can think of. So again, our immigration, is it the best? Maybe not. Probably not. Do I know of other countries where immigration is a whole lot easier? Not me personally. If you do, please include in the comments or hit me up through DM, like most people almost always do, and let me know. It does just hopefully, stay strong. Hope, whatever you deserve, you will get it. Sometimes it just takes time. Whether it's a company, you can ask me about all the challenges of running a startup. Things take time, a lot more time than you might anticipate. Immigration is probably going to be no different, right? And things always keep changing, right? When the government changes, policies change, you have to get adjusted to it, you have to see how it pans out, and then go through that process. And just the way how life works. I would love to know someone else's opinion. Maybe you're an immigrant, maybe it took you longer, maybe it took you shorter, maybe you decided to do something else, or maybe you're not an immigrant and you have an opinion about this topic and you want to share. I would love to hear, because I think this is very important. It's close to a lot of our hearts. Some of us have gone through the process as immigrants, and other people are, looking at other immigrants, and you make, have an opinion one way or the other. But I think understand that, it's the life is not easy for anybody, right? It's not easy for the immigrants who are going through the process, and it's not easy for the people here who are processing that immigration and coming up with these policies either. So let's all try to be sort of be nice to each other and be grateful for having the opportunity to live in America or have something to do with America, because I don't honestly think there's a better place that exists as of the time of the speaking of this recording, I should say. That's about it for now. Thank you.